All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Good to have you here. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about the breaking news footage that has just come out from Paris over the weekend, where basically there was this football match. France won. As a way of celebrating, the entire country was set on fire by these football hooligans, or at least that's the way the mainstream news is covering it. Now, of course, there is an element of football hooliganism that is happening here, but this is not like the hooliganism that we've seen all across Europe over the last 20, 30, 40 years, where yes, there's drunkenness, things get damaged, people get into fights, but we have not seen the wholesale destruction of virtually every city with arson attacks and people getting killed. This is something else entirely. And I'm going to share with you on the show today, for the first time that I've seen anyone else talk about this, what is actually going on here. So what you need to understand when you look at this footage is that one thing is missing from all of these videos, and that is French people. Where are the French people in all of these videos showing the kind of arson attacks, the violence with the police officers, the setting off of fireworks? Now, of course, for those with a keen eye, you'll zoom in and you'll find the odd person who's white. They are far and few between, and you have to work really hard to try and find them. They're often in the far fringes and not where all the action is. But by and large, and I've looked at a lot of the footage from the weekend, this is almost entirely young Islamic men from North Africa and the Middle East. Now, why is that? Now, I've covered on the show multiple times the Islamic takeover of France, but just in case you haven't watched those videos, let me remind you. Paris is now 20% Muslim. Marseille is 25 to 35% Muslim. And by the way, the numbers I'm about to list off, these are all kind of like government numbers. They may not be the true numbers when you take into account the illegal Islamic population. So take all this with a pinch of salt and just know that these numbers are likely far greater. Lyon, 20%, Lille, 20%, Toulouse, 15%, Nice, 15%, right? This is very close to the Cannes Film Festival. These beautiful south of France towns and cities are now turning into slum towns that reflect Morocco and other parts of North Africa. Bordeaux is now 12% Muslim, Strasbourg 15%, and get this, Roubaix is now 40 to 50% Muslim according to official numbers. 50% Muslim. And people are still saying that this kind of displacement of native Europeans is a conspiracy theory from the far right. This is absurd. And in Saint Denis, which is a kind of suburb in Paris, we now have similar numbers, 35 to 50% Muslim. But it gets even more worrying. Now, the overall national numbers for Muslims in France is that it's between 8 to 10%. I don't trust those numbers, but that's what they say. But when you look at the under 16s population in France, you actually find that the Muslim population is between 20 and 25%, or at least 15 to 25% are Muslims. And so we are seeing as well that children of North African, Middle Eastern, or Muslim backgrounds are making up 30 to 60% of school-age populations, meaning that the next generation of people in France is going to be heavily tilted towards it being 30 to 60% from the North African, Middle Eastern population. So this is what the future demographics of France is going to look like. Now, the moment a country's population starts reflecting the populations in those Middle Eastern, North African countries, it's the same time that that country is going to start looking and operating a lot like those Islamic countries in the Middle East, aka they don't function, it's violent, it's a third world, nothing works, the electricity doesn't stay on, the water's undrinkable, right? This is what's coming to France. So if you're an investor, if you're a venture capitalist, if you're thinking about moving to France, just know that your window is looking very, very tight indeed. So tourism is going to end for Paris and all over France and all over Europe. The tourism industry is just going to slow down to a halt. But let's get back to the protests and the riots that we've seen in Paris. Something that the mainstream news hasn't focused on, and indeed virtually no other content creator talking about this is covering, is that France is riddled with Islamic sleeper cells who have gotten into France through the boats, right? We know that ISIS have been using these refugee boats to infiltrate like Trojan horses into Europe. So we have sleeper cells from all kinds of various terrorist factions and allegiances, whether that's to ISIS, right, the Islamic State, or whether that's to the IRGC, the Islamic Republic of Iran, or Hezbollah, or Hamas, or Al-Shabaab, or the Houthis, or whoever it might be. France is riddled with these sleeper cells, as are various other countries, right? They are just sleeping, they are dormant, they are living their kind of normal lives, waiting for opportunities and directions from on high to unleash chaos and terror. So anytime there's a big event, there's a football match, right? They are waiting to exploit it as a reason for chaos and destruction and terrorism and violence against the police and setting fire to stuff and causing hundreds of millions of euros worth of damage, which the taxpayer has to pay, right? This cripples the country. And so we need to remember when it comes to looking at this footage that yes, although there is football hooliganism involved, and also there is just just pure violence coming from Islamic populations, migrant populations, who are just doing it because they're bored or they're not working or they're resentful or they hate the culture or just looking for an excuse for violence. On top of that, we have people who are kind of deliberate actors that could be part of actually spurring this on, organizing things, causing some of the most damage. So that's another part of the story that we need to consider. Now, another side to the story is when you have Muslim populations that are now in the 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of your country, you're going to bring along with it the massive amounts of inbreeding that these cultures are involved with. So within Islam, inbreeding is perfectly fine. First cousin marriage is actually encouraged because Muhammad said that it's good and he did it himself. And so the Islamic world cannot say that it's not good, despite all the birth defects that come along with it. Nevertheless, Islamic cultures are stricken with this pandemic of inbreeding. So when it comes to Pakistan, we are seeing that between 65 to 90% of the country are inbred, as in they're having first cousin marriages. And this is not just between the people being married today, which is that percentage, but every generation. So people's parents from both sides have been inbred. All of their grandparents have been inbred. All of their great-great-grandparents beyond them have been inbred. And so you have centuries upon centuries upon centuries of first cousin marriages, basically not only causing the kind of birth defects, but also lowering of the IQ, lower intelligence. And what that does to a people is that it makes them more prone to violent outbursts, group mentality, group clan-based violence, and the inability to think critically. There's also a gravitation towards simplistic explanations of the world and kind of cult personality types like these imams or terrorist leaders or dictators, which they swarm to because, again, this lack of critical thinking. These are patterns that we see in lower IQ individuals, lower IQ societies. And so even without the Islamic justification for violence, when it comes to jihad and terrorism and all the other things that I cover on the show a lot, even without that, those inbred populations are just far more prone to violence and tribal warfare and a lack of trust in institutions outside of their immediate family, right? Because everything becomes blood related. If you're not part of my clan, then I don't trust you, I hate you, I am justified in killing you. And this is why things just don't work in those societies. For example, and this is one extreme example, if you have a surgery that you need done for your health, right? You've got an emergency, you go to the doctors, and the doctor is of a different clan or tribe to you. You can't trust him to do the operation. You can't trust the nurses not to, put too much anesthetic and kill you, or too much your drug medication just far too high and overdose you. You can't trust anyone in the hospital. You can't trust anyone in the police force because, again, like you're of a different tribe to them. They're going to not be favorable or fair to you. Then you can't trust your democratically elected representative, which is why you don't have this kind of stuff in those cultures, because he's from a different clan than me. He's only going to favor his own clan. He's not going to represent my interests. And so it's very difficult to actually run anything because of the huge amounts of nepotism and favoritism towards your own clan. And so what's happened to Europe is you've brought all of them into your midst. And it's not just from one clan. You've brought all the various clans in with all this immigration. And so they see these outbreaks of hooliganism as a perfect opportunity, as a cover to do their own tribal violence against each other, right? Because it's all under the blanket of, this is just violence. People are just rowdy from the football game. But again, this is just more excuses to get out in the streets and, vandalize your tribal clan members, the opposing vehicles or houses or shop fronts or whatever it is. So this is another side to the story. And as far as I know, there is not a single other YouTuber, content creator online who is covering all of this, right, who's giving you the statistics on the percentage of Muslims in various cities, who is talking about the Islamic ideology and the belief system, or the effects of inbreeding, the percentage of inbreeding of all these various countries. And to me, it's just crazy that we're not all talking about this. And I just want these videos to be in the ears of Macron and the governments and the militaries and the police. It's like, are you guys all talking with each other? Is the mass migration person at the front door of the immigration office like understanding this information when he's making a decision whether to let these people in? There seems to be this overall lack of awareness about what Islamic culture is actually all about, what the Islamic belief system actually is, how it was founded, what they actually believe, what's in the Quran, what's in the Hadiths, what's in the Sunnah, who is Muhammad, what are the crime rates in these Islamic countries, why is it that they're all inbred, why is it they all just don't work, why is there so much violence, why are women treated like trash, why? And it seems like there is this total obliviousness and naivety all across the Western world. So I ask you, if you got something out of this video, to please send it on to someone. Give this video a thumbs up, hype it, comment down below, subscribe to the show if you haven't already. And if you really want to support the show, I encourage you to go check out the merch link down below. We've just got some new designs on there, which help support the show. YouTube is not always generous with these videos because they view it as, I don't know, politically incorrect or something. So they sometimes restrict my videos. So this is another way, if you want to support the show, go check out the merch link. I'll speak to you in the next one. God bless.